Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Burnett, founder and CEO of Space Ventures, the first platform applying equity crowdfunding to the space industry. So, welcome, Aaron. Super happy to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having the conversation. Aaron Burnett, I'm the founder and CEO of Space Ventures, and what we're doing is really trying to create, the world's largest community of space investors, because ultimately what we want to see happen is a future where there are 1 million people off planet, whether on the moon, Mars, or a million more people off planet, whether moon, Mars, Venus, what have you. All that stuff excites us, and that's the future we want to see. So we are investors who invest in that. What that fundamentally means, we are an equity crowdfunding platform that does that and invests in space companies specifically. So, my background is a little bit different. I don't come from space engineering or which is a lot of people in the space industry, or I don't come from traditional finance. My original roots are in Fortune 500 marketing and tech, community building and things like that. I saw the Falcon Heavy with a Tesla on top on a live stream. It's actually in Ecuador at the time. And I saw that happening and I said, wow, I need to be a part of this industry because I've been a hobbyist investor since I was 12. My mom opened a brokerage account for me. I've been watching as much science fiction and things like that as I could. But when I saw that happening in front of me, I said, the future's here. I need to be a part of it. I need to make it go even faster. So that's really what kind of got me in. It made me figure out how we can help the industry move faster over the course of time. Eventually what happened was put 2 and 2 together. Probably took longer than I'd want to admit. But we realized there's an opportunity to bring in normal people, democratize access to space through ownership, and get early stage companies funded at the very beginning stages of their life cycle and get them moving faster. So those two problems that were problems, lack of access and lack of funding, kind of solved each other by bringing them together. So that's what we're doing. And just trying to spread that message and let people know that that's what we're doing. And we see the future a little bit brighter than most.
Wow, really interesting. And especially because you have like a non-traditional background. So what would you say it was like the biggest trigger when it comes to that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the investing side, so I've always been a hobby kind of investor. I learned, my mom got me investing. She opened a brokerage account on Charles Schwab, I think it was, back in, I think it would have been 2001. I was 12 years old, so roughly 2000, 2001. And there was a big tech bubble happening right around that time. So it was an interesting time to learn how to invest. So we've just always been that kind of family. My grandparents and parents would have CNBC running growing up. So, that's just the type of things I saw and watched growing up. But so that was always part of it. But, then again, right, my mom just had us do it. I guess when you're that young, you can't do your own trading, right? You have to have a custodial account. So you go in there and I had that, but we were always taught to kind of save and, think about investing and stuff like that from an early age.
And I wanted to ask you, what kind of investors do you normally have? Because, what you guys are doing is not the most common thing on earth.
No, it's definitely not. And what we're doing involves high risk. Anytime you're investing early stage, venture capitalists and all this stuff, you lose way more than you win. And so what you do is you create kind of a portfolio where there's going to be maybe 9 losses and 1 winner, and that 1 winner offsets all of your losses, right? It's a very kind of high risk sort of game, if you will. But there's people that put these portfolios together and have done it for a long time. Some are more successful than others. So what we do is invest in space companies, which often take even longer and have even higher risk of failure. You're putting things on rockets, which is essentially a giant bomb. Everything else could go right, and the rocket launch could go wrong, and you could lose everything, right? Years of work, millions of dollars. So there is a level of risk associated with what we do that is pretty intense. And so one of the things that we look for are people that understand that, right? So our investors could be anyone, really. Like we tend to have a lot more people from the US invest, but anyone over the age of 18 can invest legally. And so we allow them to invest through the platform. We have all these things they have to do to make sure they're, staying legal in their investment. And we're making sure the companies are staying legal in how they disclose things. But the individual on our platform can be absolutely anybody. So we have people from the industry, we have engineers, people that are literally building rocket engines and also investing in other space companies. And then we have people that are truck drivers, right? But want to be a part of the industry in some way, shape, or form. And so you can really have that whole gamut. But at the end of the day, I think the key thing that unites us all is that we want to invest in a future that we want to see happen, right? We want to invest in it and own a piece of it.
Okay, this is really interesting. I mean, basically, it can be anyone, just like you're mentioning. And do you remember who your first investor was? Or the first investor that really caught up your attention, that you were like, okay, this guy or this woman is not into the industry, like it can be anyone.
Yeah, I mean, there's several surprises, like no specific one person was really like, super surprising to me. We've had some folks though that were, like I said, we were setting this up so we started in 2020, we started like the company, as far as like the paperwork's concerned. We weren't really able to do any kind of launch of anything until the following year, because we have to get licenses, we have to build the product, all of that stuff. So that took time, and we were putting that all together. So we had some familiarity, and during that time, you build relationships with folks. I think some of the things that surprised me is, you have teachers, you have, like I mentioned, truck drivers, you have a variety of different people that just really want to be a part of it. But there's also kind of surprises me just how much people are excited about it too, and willing to invest quite a bit, because our average check sizes can be quite substantial too. So we've had people that have invested in us that are part of the space industry. That's always been very, very important to us, because for us, what we think about is this is really a relationship business when it comes to the companies, because you need to help them, guide them. They're engineers. They're not necessarily worrying about engineering the financial side of what they're doing. So we want to help them throughout their journey, make those companies successful, so that we make money, all of our investors make money, all of that. So, the industry has always been important to us. So we do have a lot of folks in the industry, and that's always been really nice to see.
And I also wanted to ask you, like, is there something specific that people should know before getting their first investment into the space venture?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, and I mentioned this earlier, right? The people that invest in our platform are risk takers, right? They understand that there is risk. And fundamentally, no matter where you're investing, when it's these early stages, it's not the same as investing in a stock on the public markets, right? Those companies have to be more mature. They have to go through several stages of things with the SEC. These companies have a far higher chance of failure. And that's not comparing us to other platforms or other early stages. It's just in general early stage. So we do our best to really try to, reduce any kind of fraudulent activities and all that other stuff to keep it as high a potential opportunity as possible, has high a chance of success. But, there's no way to know. There's just 100,000 different ways a company can fail. They can be the best team, the best market, and, a hurricane, can mess up their buildings and set them back years, or, like I mentioned, a launch, whatever. There's so many things. And so we do make sure everyone understands there's just inherent risk. So whenever someone is investing, they need to think about this in that portfolio theory mindset. If you invest in 10, try and invest in 20, because and make those check sizes smaller if you need to, because there's a good chance of failure. There's a high chance of failure, as much as 80, 90% chance that they're just going to totally fail. No matter how good they are, no matter how good we think they are, it just won't matter, because there's just too many variables. And so that's what we like to make sure everyone is aware of, make sure they're thinking about that. And there have been, there are massive people, like very rich people that have been minted to be billionaires off of essentially single investments, or $100 million or more in returns on things like this. So it happens, but you can't bankroll on that, right? You have to think about, your financial success and what that looks like for you, and understand that there's a very good chance you lose this one investment, the next investment, third investment, and potentially there's 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 that are successful.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, there are actually two sides. It's because it's like a marketplace, right? So on one side, you have the investor access, and what about the other one?
Yeah, and then on the other side, really, this is all going to be about, early stage space companies, right? So these are founders that are trying to make it. A lot of times, we see these really great plans, not just ideas, right? They have plans, they have degrees, they have background in NASA or JPL or something, right? Where they can make that work. But they still need that first 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is, to actually put it up there. Because where we get a lot of struggle in the industry currently is that they have a plan, they have maybe a prototype that can sit on their desk, but they need to build this into a commercially viable product. And it will take a couple $100,000 to build it. And then they also have to put it in orbit and have people to run it and all that stuff. So it's like 1 million or 2 million or 3 million. And then their customers can start paying them. And a lot of times where people that are writing really big checks, like 1 million, 2 million at a time, that tends to be venture capitalists or really large angel investors. That's a lot of risk for them to take, right? If you're going to lose $1 million all in one shot, you want to be more careful. And so oftentimes those check writers are saying, come back to me when you have revenue so I know it's real, right? To reduce my risk. And that means there's a lot of these great opportunities that are not getting over that hump. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. And so what we found is we talk to those founders, we give them an opportunity to raise some money early on that gets them going, full well knowing they'll probably need more down the line, of course. This isn't like a one shot, like simple 1 million and you're done. Space needs a lot of money still. So as those things evolve, we kind of help to accelerate those early stages, but we really look for people that have the best plans, the best founders behind them, and potential markets that are quite big. And because we could have 10,000 people come together with, $100 check or something, right? That can be a meaningful amount of money to a company where all those 10,000 people can afford to lose $100. So it just makes the risk and reward make sense here, where you can start to pan that out and get really small checks and still take a little bit of a risk, but together it's meaningful enough to make a company potentially quite successful.
You do not sound like a marketing guy. You sound like a business guy. Totally.
Well, one thing I've noticed, this is something I bring to everyone, right? Like, when you care about something and you're passionate about something, you do more research and more diving into things than anyone else will, right? And so that's what helps me wake up in the morning early or what have you, right? Or go to bed late, because I'm looking at other ways to grow this thing, right? Or other ways to understand. A founder asks me a question that I don't know the answer to. I go in Google for 6 hours to figure it out. Or I go question, 3 different lawyers to figure out what the different opinions are and what I think based on all that. So if you care and have that level of attention to detail and the willingness to put the work in, then you're probably already in the 99th percentile of people that can actually do something interesting with this. I think that you do have to care. You have to put in more work than other people that are just maybe naturally gifted or already have the training. But if you put in that work, then you probably can have a level of success that is maybe bigger than you originally thought. And so that's, I always try and encourage people, just try. And if it's something you're really passionate about, work hard and you'll probably have a shot at doing something interesting. And you probably won't be too, sad if you gave it a shot and you fail.
And I wanted to ask you, okay, let's go back to the investment part. And after people invest, how often should they expect for any kind of updates? Or it depends on the kind of company?
Yeah, so generally speaking, when you're talking about venture capital, they tend to expect a return on their money within 5 to 7 years, right? So that's what they generally expect. So in space, that can even be longer. That can be 7 to 10 years, right? So you do have to think about that as you're putting that down. And
personally speaking, do you have maybe not say like a specific company, but a specific kind of a startup, a space startup that you will invest into?
Well, it's kind of like making me choose my favorite child or something, right? Like, I really, there's a lot of space companies that are doing some really interesting things when it comes from an investment perspective, things that interact with data versus
Okay.
strictly physical products are a little bit easier to sell. So from a commercial perspective, you could argue that data related products, companies that are taking pictures of the earth and selling that picture, it's a little bit
Mhm.
easier to sell a picture than it would be to say, I don't know, sell gas in orbit. But the things that get me excited, right, the things that I want to see, and again, this comes back to kind of the who we are and who I think our people are. These are people that want to see the future and they want to own a piece of that future. So they're excited about the long shots. So I really like companies that are doing things like gas stations in space and stuff that just feels crazy super futuristic, but is actually happening now.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the last questions that I wanted to ask you, like, what would you say it has been the biggest challenge that you have managed to solve while funding the company?
So I think from a challenge perspective, this kind of harkens back to what you mentioned before about, someone not from the industry or what have you. I think that level of knowing and being kind of an imposter, if you will, having that feeling of being an imposter, overcoming that is it takes time. You have to have confidence in your own ability to just understand stuff, but that passion or whatever can really help. So I feel like that is something I can look back as a massive challenge, and I still have quite a ways to go, of course, but I do think that's a pretty big hurdle that I was able to overcome basically with just a lot of passion and grit and determination.
And last but not least, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on the space industry?
Yeah, so what is it that you want to do with the rest of your life? If to me, and some people are motivated heavily by money, right? So, and that's not a negative thing. I'm not trying to say, sometimes there's a very strong motivation to just make a ton of money and do something else with your life, right? So that can be very motivating. That was never the thing that motivated me. And so, if you have something that really motivates you, if it's something you can see and find as like, I wish I could do this every single day of my life, that level and that interest and that passion, that self-motivated interest is going to push you through those obstacles that will come, because invariably you're going to fail probably 100 times before you're successful. So as that happens, what is it that will motivate you to the next step? Make sure you understand that. Making sure you have a clear vision of that, I think, is helpful for any entrepreneur, whether in space or not. And then in space, I would just say, like, founders, they really need to understand their financial plan. A lot of them are so focused on the engineering side of things that which is very difficult, and I'm glad that they're thinking about that. But there's a lot of options when they're thinking about their capital plans. And so whether that's us or other people or other products, right? Think about how you can effectively and efficiently raise money for something that's a big challenge that will take, in many cases, tens of millions of dollars. How are you going to do that, right? Is there a plan to get you from A to B?
Last but not least, any advice for CEOs?
So from a CEO perspective, I think being able to, something that I'm learning that I need to be better at is communication within the organization. It's very easy to just kind of like talk and try and be natural and buddy, whatever, kind of normal. But I think being purposeful with your communication is something I'm learning and trying to do better at, because making sure everyone is on the same path and the same vision is itself a job that I thought just naturally took care of itself.
Really, really good advice. And thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your experiences. Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you? Where can people find the company?
Yeah, our company is spacedventures.com. So it's going to be space with a D, spacedventures.com. You can see all the deals we have out there. We are on LinkedIn, Twitter, social media. Spaced Ventures should pop up. I don't know the exact handles off the top of my head. But yeah, I'd love to engage and interact and, build the community of the largest community of space investors as we go. So happy to have more people join us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles just like this one, directly on our website, controlhub.com/pillar-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your stories and your really great advices.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's been fun.